Hello, my name is Sakiko, and this is my very first post on this platform, Buy Me a Coffee. I don't drink coffee, so in my account, I have switched Buy Me a glass of wine. I am Japanese, and English isn't my native tongue, so please bear with my English and be patient for me. So first, I'd like to explain why I'm doing this. There are several reasons. COVID pandemic makes some changes among overseas Takarazuka fandom. Old fan means they found Takarazuka and became fans way before this pandemic. Those people have their favorite stars, join clubs, often go to Japan to see live shows doing irimachi, demachi. But since the pandemic hit, their favorite stars did announce Taidan, but they couldn't go to Japan to see them off, watch their Taidan shows. Therefore, they've got so frustrated and disappointed. Gradually, their passion for Takarazuka becomes less. The other hand, there is a group of people who found Takarazuka during this COVID pandemic. I call them new fans. Their passion is amazing. They want to know everything, anything about Takarazuka. So I want to do something special, attractive, and interesting for both groups. Something I am only able to do. As you may know, I have my own personal project called World of Dreams. I've been producing it for overseas fans since 2017. It's Takarazuka OG concert tour outside of Japan. Because it's my own project, I don't have any sponsorships. I'm very poor at getting sponsors. So I always struggle to produce it financially. Those OGs are real pro, as you know, so they don't perform anything for free or small money, especially star level OGs. Under COVID pandemic, I could not produce any of my shows, but I'd like to restart the tour again next year. If I can support us through this platform, it will definitely help my project so I can take my show to more overseas places. I would love to take my show to your cities. So now, at first, I'd like to talk about my upbringing, which you may find it interesting. I was born in Osaka and grew up in Takarazuka City. My grandparents were good friends of Kobayashi Ichizo. I'm sure you all know who is Kobayashi Ichizo, right? My grandparents and Kobayashi Ichizo were very into tea ceremony. My grandparents had a tea house in their backyard, so did Kobayashi Ichizo. They often had tea ceremony event together in their tea houses. By the way, Kobayashi Ichizo-san's house, it still existed, and now it's turned into the museum called Itsuo Museum in Ikeda City, right next to Takarazuka City. So if you are interested in, please go visit sometime. The girls who enter TMS first year have a short excursion in April as a group to go to this museum and Kobayashi Ichizo-san's graveyard, which is nearby. So since I was very little, my grandparents always took me to see the shows. Of course, I don't know what was my first show I watched because I was too small to remember. But the first show I remember vividly was Gubijin in March 1974. I was 10 that time. I saw that show with my grandma and my cousin. I still remember Otoriran and Ohara Masumi in that show was so beautiful and amazing. The next show I remembered vividly was Berubara in 1975. I was sitting with my dad on the second row, and Matsu Akira playing Feruzen came on Ginkyo singing. She was holding a rose in her hand, and after she finished singing, she threw that rose at me. I caught it, and I was super excited and happy. Well, maybe I was stood out because I was a little girl sitting so close to Ginkyo. Also, one of my neighbors were Kotobuki Hizuru's aunt. Ii-chan, if you don't know who Kotobuki Hizuru, please check Takawiki. She was one of Hanagumi legends. And other Hanagumi stars that time, like Anna Jun, Matsu Akira, were always hanging out her auntie's place after the show. I once got invited by her aunt, introduced to Anna Jun. She gave me some of her drawings she did. I remembered her drawings were all clowns shedding tears. Kind of sad image, I thought then. Unfortunately, I don't have those paintings anymore. I gave them all to my friend who were a huge Anna Jun fan. Regret, regret, regret. When I was 8th grade, which was 14 years old, Ii-chan's aunt asked me if I could work for Jennu-san's dressing room. It was my first paid job. Basically what I did, cleaning their dressing room, but the main job was, those days the fan did sashire from restaurants and coffee shops around Grand Theater. Once those shops got sashire order, they call the dressing room and tell the staff who's got what. So I ran to those places to pick up those sashire and bring them back to the dressing room. Yes, it was very physical, demanding job, but I was young enough to manage that. Once I was in high school, my interest moved to Western theaters and learning English. So I hardly went to see Takarazuka. One of my classmates from elementary school and middle school entered TMS. Her name is Mitsuya now. I've been calling her Yuka-chan till this day. Well, we are so-called childhood friends. She was in Hanagumi for 10 years, so I occasionally went to see Hanagumi shows during my high school time. Speaking of Yuka-chan, she is the 67th class, same class as Maya Miki, Kuroki Hitomi, Suzukaze Mayo, and Rika Masumi in Senka, who is the only person from 67th class still stay in the company. Yuka-chan becomes a voice coach after her Taidan, and now she's mainly in charge of training Shinko lead Seito. She also gives private lessons to upper class people. Kozuki Wataru, Chigi, Diamond, and Misaki Leon were religiously taking private lessons from her even after their Shinko time was over. Here is a few fun stories. Once I had lunch appointment with Yuka-chan in Tokyo, but a few days before she asked for a last-minute cancellation. I asked her why, and she said Diamond just called and asked for a private lesson, so she had to go back to Mura. It was Diamond's Phantom production time. Of course, I said, no problem, just go. I was super proud of my friend Yuka, who was able to coach Diamond. Daimon, yo? すごいね。Yuka-chan told me other stories. She has a lesson studio in Tokyo too. So some Seito go there for private lessons during Tokyo Run. Some top stars, I cannot mention who, drove BMW or Mercedes or with drivers. But Kozuki Wataru, even she was top star at that time, took subway and walked to her studio. She told Yuka-chan once, outside Takarazuka world, I am not a top star. I am just a person. So I don't need to be treated anyone special. いい人ね. So now, let's move to talk about why I decided to produce OG concert. In 2012, Ai-chan, Aizuki Hikaru's dad, asked me to reach out to overseas fans to promote his daughter because Ai-chan needed more fans in order to keep her in Star Trek. Since I left Japan after high school, I never followed up Takarazuka, so I couldn't believe at first there were some fans in overseas. I started to research and able to hit Takawiki and other fandom. Oh boy, you guys are there. I was so surprised and shocked to find you guys. Thanks to YouTube, TikTok, all other SNS. As I talked to overseas fans, I found most of them were young and couldn't afford to go to Japan to see live shows. And they all said it's their dream to go to Japan someday to see Takarazuka live. That moment, I realized how lucky I was for my upbringing and felt so appreciative you guys who live in thousand miles away from Japan love my hometown culture. Suddenly, it popped in my mind. If they can't go to Japan, why don't I take Takarazuka style concert to overseas? So at least they can experience to see live shows. That's how I started my World of Dream project. Alright, enough my story. So I will plan to post at least twice a month on this platform. Definitely I will do Q&A from you. And I often go back to Japan almost every 2 or 3 months and watch the shows there, so I will report and talk about the shows I watch. So far, I am supposed to go back to Japan early September and watch High and Low and Hoshigumi National Tour. So, just looking forward to it. Other time, once a month, I will invite some OGs to interview. No worries, I will speak English during the entire interview and I will get interpreter for guest OG so you will understand what we talk about. So please send me questions. It's okay to be anonymous. Things you like to know, some inside stories you like to hear. I will try your questions. I will try to answer your questions as much as I could. I have been often asked who is my favorite genre or what is my favorite troupe. Well, I don't have any favorite troupe. I like all troupes. Each troupe is different and beautiful. But I can say Emma Naoki is my favorite. Of course, I have bias. As some may know, Junko is my very close friend. Until COVID hit, she and I traveled overseas together once a year. That was our almost annual event. In 2018, when Junko and I went to Amsterdam, I think about 8 or 9 Zuka fans came to see us and had dinner together. Some flew all the way from Stockholm, Sweden to see Junko. It was such a great time. Well, I can say there are 3 others I keep my eyes on these days. Those 3 were graduated from the same middle and high school as mine. So we are alumni. 後輩ね、私の。One is Oki Makoto in Hoshigumi. One is Rinno Shizuka in Hanagumi. And Sakishiro Kei in Yukigumi. Of course, I like to see how Kiki is doing because I know her parents well. Now, I like to share a few inside stories. Speaking of top stars, Nibante Taidan, they're all mentioned at the press conference when to consider their Taidan first. But it's a whole bunch of crap. It's scheduled by the company. They are told when to leave. Because the producers have to plan and schedule the shows 3 years ahead, the cast too. Therefore, those stars have no choice. But sometimes they get offered alternative choice. For example, Ai-chan, after she moved to Senka from Soragumi, she was told by the company she had 2 choices. One was stay in Senka for another 6 or 7 years and leave. Or the other choice was to move to Hoshigumi as Nibante for 2 years and leave. Ai-chan took Nibante choice. Needless to say, it was very hard for her and upset a big time. So when she moved to Hoshigumi, she already knew her time was for only 2 years and not be able to become a top star. Another example, Yuki-chan, Senna Ayase, was forced Taidan at Casanova. She didn't want to. She wanted to Taidan with Mirio, as a Mirio. The only way she was able to stay was Mirio insisted to the company that she wanted to Yuki-chan to stay and Taidan together. Yuki-chan was strongly hoping Mirio did so. But unfortunately, Mirio didn't. She followed whatever the company decision. Yuki-chan was so upset. But after all, everything turned out to be great for her. Yuki-chan and her parents appreciated so much for the company decision. She was able to do Sayonara show solo. If she did Taidan with Mirio, all focus went to Mirio, and Yuki-chan was just a supporting position. The company costume team made a few brand new, beautiful costumes just for her at Casanova. So now you know Asazuki Kiwa in Yukigumi is in the same shoe. When she came top musumeyaku, her time was set for 2 years. Now, I like to talk about fan letters. It is great that you write letters to your stars passionately. No question about it. What I'm saying here doesn't mean to discourage you to write it. But I have few suggestions. I've been asked by some stars to summarize the letters, especially from overseas fans, because they don't have time and patience to read lengthy letters. Most stars who are up to Sanbante are super busy and not much time to read long letters. So your letters must not to be remembered. If you write letters to kakuse or not big stars, this is a different story. You can write everything you want to say. They have time. So I suggest you to write something short and precise. No need to mention how much you love them and Takarazuka. They hear it very often from other fans, so nothing new, and just a repeat of what they've heard many times. If you want to write something personal in order to be remembered, keep it very short. In other hand, they love to hear something opening up their eyes. Something helps them for character analysis. Here's some examples. In 2016, there was Todoroki Yu's production called For the People. My dear friend Junko was in it. One day, I found the article about Abraham Lincoln and Civil War in Newsweek magazine. And I thought the cast and Harada sensei might find it interesting. So I sent it to Junko, attached my translation. She was so glad, and she made the copies and shared the article with other casts and Harada sensei. The following year, I happened to bump into Harada sensei at Osaka Itami Airport. He remembered that and appreciated it. Another example was one Danish fan and I have talked about Mirio playing Danish guy in Hannah's Florist. She said Mirio's mannerism in that show was not like Danish. Of course it is Takarazuka, of course it is Mirio, so I didn't pay attention to her comment much. But I happened to pop it in my head when I was having dinner with Junko one day, so I shared the story with her. She told me those kind of comments are very helpful for any actors in Takarazuka. Later on, she told a story in the Sky Stage program hosted by Junko called Master no Oshie. Now you know what I am trying to tell you here, right? Anyways, that is all for today. Thank you very much for watching this, my very first post, and thank you so much for your support. I am looking forward to your questions for my next post. Till then, bye-bye.